You asked for it. We're delivering it. This is the JavaScript roadmap if you are learning JavaScript this year. Once you learn core fundamentals of programming in a language, there's some percentage, that is a majority for sure, of fundamentals and concepts in a language transfer over to another.
If you can get a good handle on variables, loops, conditions, functions, you can build whatever you want.
What's going on, everyone? We are back with another one. Another one. All right. Y'all have asked for this repeatedly. And so we thought, okay, let's go ahead and break it down. If you haven't already seen it, we do have a video out there, or a podcast episode out there, where it covers like the roadmap if you're trying to learn how to get a job, and we cover a lot of this, but y'all wanted specifics. And so Leon and I, we're here but to serve, and that's kind of what we did here. And we went and we kind of pulled together our sources of knowledge to say, if you were learning JavaScript today, what would be the things that you're looking at, you're covering, and the way to progress to the end. So before we get into all that, number one, if you haven't already, drop us a follow, subscribe, drop that heart, drop a comment letting us know what you like and dislike and how we're doing. And I mean, I think we're 38 episodes in as of the time we're recording this. So we're trying to make sure we always serve you in the best ways that we can. So if you drop a like on this, it costs you nothing, but it brings us everything, meaning we know we're doing right by you. And so if you appreciate the effort, that's all that we ask. Drop a like wherever you're listening to this. If it's a YouTube video, thanks for hanging out with us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, drop that like, all that good stuff. And the only thing that we'll do on our side is keep upholding our end of the bargain and making sure we bring value every single episode. We think about it a lot. Y'all, I wish you saw the conversations or the things that we scrapped in the process because we said there's not enough value here.
Whole episodes, multiple whole episodes gone because we're like, nah, they're not going to get anything out of that.
Exactly. And for us, that's the biggest thing. Like, I'm a very big firm believer of value for time. If you're not getting value for time, we're not doing our job. And so that's kind of what I'm constantly thinking about around these. So even when it comes to like that windsurf episode, by the way, I've seen all the matcha comments. We got a lot. I've seen all the matcha comments. I've seen all the feedback. People really, really liked it. I saw one comment in particular who was like, I don't like this at all. And I was like, that means we just got outside of our bubble and new people found us. So yeah. I like that. But I will say, we will do our absolute best effort every single time to live up to the expectations that y'all have of us. So let's get into this thing.
Let's do it.
Without further ado, I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Danny Thompson. I'm the Director of Technology at This.Labs and the community organizer for the Commit Your Code conference in Dallas.
And I'm Leon Noel, Managing Director of Engineering for a wonderful nonprofit called Resilient Coders and community member at 100 Devs. Let's go.
Let's go. All right.
So
you want to kick this off? You want me to kick this off?
Yeah. So we're talking specifically about a JavaScript roadmap. Like Danny said, we've talked through, if you're kind of like, how do I get into a development career? That's a whole other litany of things that you have to be focusing on to get the job. But specifically the learning of JavaScript. So if you want to know how do I find DM folks to get a referral, like we have whole episodes on that, but this is the technology aspect, the coding aspect that's going to help you on that journey, and specifically picking JavaScript. And so for myself and for a lot of the folks I've helped on their learning to code journey, the thing we reach for first is JavaScript. I like it for a few really important reasons. One, you can learn one language that'll take you through the front end, the back end. It'll be something that you can quickly start playing with. You can visually see what's happening. You have an environment, aka the browser running on your computer, your phone, wherever it may be, that can execute this code. You don't need any fancy tooling, things like that. and it covers the basics pretty well. And then later on, you can incorporate things like TypeScript that give you even more and make you even more of a weapon going into the job market. So for me, it's the tool of choice if you're learning, because it has all of these easy on-ramps, but builds up to something very complex. It'll give you the best overview of all the things that you would need to be successful in this as a career. And then once you mastered this language, it's an easy jumping off point to any other languages that you might want to use, web related or not. So that's why I picked JavaScript. The second thing that I like to kind of keep people in mind is when you're learning JavaScript, I like to have the why in mind. Like, what is the point? If you're just learning for learning's sake, that might be a little bit different of a path than, hey, Leon, I want a career, and JavaScript is the first tool I'm picking up to learn these things as part of a career. So I might have different paths that I would put you on. So a lot of my advice is going to be focused on, hey, Leon, I want to go from 0 to being confident enough with a language that I could start applying for jobs. And that's kind of the roadmap that I'll be taking through it. And so the first thing for me is like, what is the why here? The why here is being able to build competently and be able to bring my ideas to life, and then my potential employers' ideas to life as well. And so that's kind of the path I'll be taking through the roadmap. Are there any other things you're thinking about in the beginning with talking about JavaScript?
There's one big thing that I'm thinking about, and I know, for those that don't know, Leon has taught at God knows how many bootcamp cohorts at this point, right? Mm-hmm. I've taught several as well. One thing that I often do when it comes to this, maybe you've already, if you found this video, you probably know what a const is at this point, right? Like, you know, some level of basic to know that you need to search up the term JavaScript and you need it relevant. What I often find with a lot of people that are learning JavaScript at this stage, hell, even if you've gone a little bit further, you may not actually know what JavaScript is used for at a company. Why is this even a thing that you need to have in your arsenal of tools? And the reality is, being very transparent, it is a very different way to solve problems. That every programming language you pick up, it's a different way to solve a problem. When you go through HTML and CSS, a lot of things make sense. It's like, I want a background red, pop, it's red. Mm-hmm. I want this box to be this width and this height, boom, it's that width and height. Makes total logical sense. Now I'm like, hey, I need an input field, and I need to make sure that they're using an email only field here. And so that way, anything that's typed in here is an email. So someone types in a phone number, it's going to give an error message like, what are you even talking about right now, right? That's validation and a whole thing, but that's what JavaScript ends up doing for you. It gives you the ability to really start doing things completely outside of your normal wheelhouse. And so you can design things on the page, like you'd make the aesthetic and all these things with HTML, CSS, but in reality, when you start working in a company, you're not going to use HTML. You're going to use, let's say, React, which uses JSX, which is very similar. It's almost the same thing syntactically. So like, you can either throw in a div, you can throw in all these other things that you've probably picked up. But the reason why you're using it in a company is when you press something and you need a form to be sent somewhere, that's what JavaScript is going to be doing for you. When you are entering a phone number and we need to check up if it's in a valid phone number, or you're entering an address and you have a third-party service validating that address for you as a company, that's what you're using JavaScript for. These very complex things that really move the needle for the bottom line of a business. This is why it's so relevant, so important for developers to know it. The last thing that I'll say is, even our last podcast episode, comments always come in, if I learn JavaScript from front end to back end, is that enough to get a job? The answer is, it could be. Yeah. But the reality is, by learning this, I always recommend front end first, not because I believe it's the best thing in the world, but I believe it's early wins that kind of get you hooked to the process. But you're learning how to learn. And the truth of the matter is, whether you realize it or not, and I know when I heard it in the beginning, I'm like, man, people are just blowing smoke at me with this one. But the reality is, once you learn core fundamentals of programming in a language, I'd say a good portion. I don't want to give a percentage because it's not going to be accurate. And I already can see people typing about it. But there's some percentage that is a majority for sure of fundamentals and concepts in a language transfer over to another. So the core idea here is if you go to a boot camp, let's say you go to Leon's boot camp and you learn MERN stack, you've learned so much to where now if you're in a job market where MERN is not king, but it's Java, a lot of that will transfer over. You'll know what a for loop is. You'll know what a switch statement is. You'll know how, private classes and constructors, you'll know all of that good stuff. So all those concepts that you work so hard to learn will make the next language easier. Once you have like a whole front end, back end kind of understanding, adopting that methodology across other languages becomes a lot easier. There'll definitely be nuances. Don't get me wrong, like encapsulation and all this stuff. If you went to Java, that's going to be all brand new, or pointers and memory. That's a whole brand new thing. But the reality is, it'll get easier significantly so the further that you go on. So learn what you need to learn and then learn what your job market dictates. We'll get back to the show in a second, but first, a word from our sponsors. Financial literacy is important, especially if you are in a position where you are changing careers and income brackets. More income can create larger financial issues if you don't budget correctly. So this episode is sponsored by Lucas Casares, certified financial planner and founder of Level Up Financial Planning, where he specializes in serving early and mid-career tech professionals to help you take your financial confidence to the next level.
Danny and I have helped thousands of people level up in tech, often going from 0 to 6-figure careers, and we've seen all kinds of mistakes. Level Up Financial Planning helps you gain clarity on all of your finances. This includes prioritizing manager-employer stock, retirement planning, tax planning and preparation, college planning, and as a special deal for our listeners, you get a complimentary meeting with Lucas. So please visit levelupfinancialplanning.com to find out more.
He's been a great supporter of the show, and to be honest, a lot of people have already checked him out. I highly recommend checking him out. Now back to the show.
And I'll take it a step further just to really highlight it. The things you learn in the beginning and part of that journey to getting the first job, I guarantee you won't use all those things on the job. Like guaranteed the things you invested those hours into learning, you just straight up won't use. And you'll have to learn even more things to be successful on the job, like Danny's pointing out. And so please do not get stuck in this cycle of, what do I have to learn so I can get the job? What do I have to learn to get the job? And never actually start learning. The thing you pick won't be the thing you use, no matter what you pick. There is no optimal 100% guaranteed you're going to learn this and it's going to meet immediately what you need for the job. That doesn't exist. The path we're laying out today, though, is going to give you everything you need to start thinking like a developer, to start being able to write code like a developer, to invest the time into learning so that you have a system to learn these things, so that when you get an opportunity somewhere, you can put that system into place and quickly learn the things that you need to learn. So please don't delay. Start today. Go down the path, get these skills, and then when the time is needed, you'll be able to pick up new ones. I think this is kind of one of the biggest mistakes I see people make early on. Is just this they get stuck, this fear of getting started. They got to find the absolute most optimized path. And no, the folks that are successful, they pick something, they stick it through to the end, and as they need to learn new tools, new things, new systems, they do it. And guess what? You'll be doing that for the rest of your career. There's not been a week of my career where I haven't learned something new, some new tool, some new bit of product that I have to incorporate into my workflow. So you might as well start now. And so with that, where do we start?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's start, because I already know there's going to be some folks that just look at the chapter topics and they're like, oh, this is done. Like, I'm just going to jot this down and skip this whole episode. But I'll be completely transparent with you. Everything that we just said is very intentionally said, because you're going to forget this moment. That will stick in your mind, and then you will understand what's happening several weeks from now. It's very, very important for you to remember this. But let's start. So this is the roadmap. And there's a lot that we're going to cover as far as topics go. But when I start thinking about, if I were to learn JavaScript today, the immediate topics that I'd be going down, obviously, would be something like, obviously, understanding variables and scoping, let const var, what is being hoisted, and block scope, and what's global scope, and all that, and how does that relate. I'd want to learn that. Functions. Now, a lot of tutorials have improved since I was learning in the beginning, because I always hated people using a tutorial was like function X and then it goes into this thing. If you're doing functions, if you're using variables, both, the biggest thing that I can tell you, and everyone is different, but for me, I'm very big on my function name and variable name being super, almost verbose, but you should be able to read the name and know what this function is doing without additional documentation, without leaving comments, etc. It should be very clear.
To the point to where it should feel silly at first. Because in the beginning, people are following tutorials and they're doing like, create a function that like adds a number 3 times. Your function name should be a function that adds a number 3 times and console logs the result, right? Like to the silliest degree, because if you can get that thought process ingrained in your brain in the beginning, as you start to do things that are more air quotes serious, that pattern sticks with you and it'll make your code base way more readable and way more maintainable, which is really important, especially someone that's entry level. You want a code base that you can come back to and actually understand what the heck you were doing.
This is and a lot of beginners need to understand, one of the biggest parts of your job as a software developer at a company is not writing brand new code. Like, you know how you look at a tutorial and they build everything from scratch. Very, very rarely will that be your day-to-day, especially if you're working in like a very large company. Generally speaking, you have code bases that are millions of lines of code, right? And you're debugging, you're maintaining, you're finding things. And for a long time, you may not even touch a file for months. And then you find out there's an error there because of something shifting that you need to adjust. Now you're trying to figure out what it is. And so not having great naming conventions will hurt you. So one example that I'll give you of this, and we're going through this in the cohort right now. One of the projects that they're building is a smart gym portal, right? And so people have gym memberships, et cetera, et cetera. And as I was reviewing some of the code, one of the functions was about a home address, right? So getting their things. So literally the function was const address. And so I said, oh, is this the address that you're storing for users that are going to the website to inquire about a membership? Or is this the address that you're storing for members that already have a membership? And they looked at me and I looked at them and I said, this is the problem. So while address seemed smart, you could have had something like const guest inquiry address or something like that. So that way, you know, hey, this is a guest. And then you could have something along the lines of const verified member address. And then you can easily distinguish between the two, and then you would know.
Yeah, so all of this is laying the groundwork for you understanding what I like to call the big 4. I gotta get my hand on the screen. The big 4. Your variables, your conditionals, your loops, and your functions. If you can get a good handle on variables, loops, conditions, functions, you can build whatever you want, right? It's just more layers on top of that. And so in the beginning, really trying to understand those. And I know a lot of you are going to do something like javascript.info or the Odin project or free code camp. And it's very easy to kind of just like skip through these things because they seem simple at first. Like, I know when you first start JavaScript, it doesn't seem simple, but as you start to get into it, you'll be like, oh, it's just a variable, it's just a conditional, it's just a loop. But like, no, really take the time to understand, to feel the syntax, to be able to type it all out from memory, to be able to like delete it and redo it, and to do all the different pieces. Like, really understand, like, when would you use var, right? Really understand the let, the cons, like understand these pieces. When you do a conditional, don't just settle for if, else, if, like learn a switch case, right? When you get to a loop, can you do all of them? Can you do the for, the while? Can you do the for of, the for in? Like, try and go deep on these topics, not wide, especially early on. Depth in the beginning will serve you so well as you move on to the other topics in this roadmap, and really kind of play with them. Make each thing your own, delete it, redo it, get that active recall, that spaced repetition into your process. Use your own tools. So if you're using something that has like a cloud or integrated IDE, like take that and then go into your own text editor, like go into your own VS Code, type it all out, make sure you can get it to run. The number of folks that like I run into that like are doing this but can't get it to run in their browser or see the result and something that's not pre-laid out for them is really high. So no matter where you're learning these things, like make it part of your process, bring it to your tools, bring it to your environment, because when you move off of these like learning platforms, you want to have those skills still ready to rock and roll.
Yeah. Which moves us further along now, right? Like data structures. So you need to, and this is like beginning data structures. Like if you ever heard like you need to learn data structures and algorithms, this is the bare bones, absolute bare bones basics of what that's going to encompass, right? And so you have arrays, you have objects, and one thing that I'd say further is learning in detail array methods, ways that you would manipulate and get values from those objects, destructuring, and how you can get those values out, I think are big. I will say that there are a lot of array methods. It's very important to be familiar with them all. With that being said, there's probably like 3 or 4 that you're going to use nonstop in a professional environment. Like the ones that immediately jump out me and come to mind, just thinking about it, is like mapping is probably going to be your go-to for 90% of like your array things, right? Like you don't ever want to adjust or distort your original array, so keep creating a copy of it that you can utilize. Very important. If you want more details on mapping, by the way, we have a whole episode on that. And so I would check that out. I also use reduce a lot, and thinking about like filter or index of, that's probably going to be like some common ones that you use. So there's quite a few array methods. Be familiar with them all, but really dive down deep in some of the core ones that you're going to use a lot.
Yeah, map, filter, reduce right off the rip, I think are the big ones I use quite frequently. And the cool thing about JavaScript specifically is eventually like we're mentioning a lot of stuff, but then there's like the meta level, I guess, like this, like what's actually happening underneath the hood. And so at first you're just using arrays, you're using objects, but then you're going to get into like prototypal inheritance. You're going to realize like everything is objects all the way down. It's like there's a lot of like really cool nuance that comes into a language like JavaScript, and I think that's a lot of where the beauty can come from it too. Like I think sometimes people feel like JavaScript's like this throwaway language for the web, but no, there's a lot of really cool stuff happening underneath the hood. And so the arrays and objects are your first like things where you get to kind of touch the way that JavaScript really works and start to see it for what it is. And so I like the idea of moving on to arrays and objects with these two pieces. Again, it's like that extra little layer that if you understand the big 4, if you understand arrays and objects, there's really not a lot that you can't build. And a lot of folks are often very worried about like the coding interviews and getting through a technical interview. The way that you can brute force most technical interviews are with the methods that Danny just mentioned. So if you know your arrays, you know your objects well, you know your map, your filter, your reduce, you throw in maybe a little bit of string methods as well, most of the big problems that you're going to solve in technical interviews outside of maybe like super FANG level questions are answerable with just this level of knowledge as like a first pass. Eventually you'll increase your data structures and algorithms knowledge, and you'll find all these other interesting bits, hash map memorization that like builds off of these things as well. But in the beginning, I like learning the arrays, the objects. I like learning my map, filter, reduce. I like learning my string methods, my split, my reverse, my joins. And then I like practicing them. So at this point in time is where I bring in something like a Codewars, where I can have very small bite-sized challenges that are reinforcing the specific thing that I am learning. So if you just picked up map or arrays specifically, there are going to be a whole set of array problems that you could do on Codewars that'll just reinforce that one thing. Don't jump between different skills, different problems. Just pick arrays, do level 8 queues, and by the end of you grinding 10 problems with arrays and maps, you will now know how to utilize this tool. And the other beautiful thing that I like about doing this is that you can see other people's code. There's a lot of like tips, tricks, gotchas when it comes to using these like the methods, like do you add the 0 or 1 after the like there's so many little things that come into play here that if you're actually looking at the solutions after you try solving the code wars, you'll pick up a lot of the best practices with each of these methods so that you can then start applying them to your code base as well. You know?
Yeah, one thing that I'll say as we are going through this list, so like for example, at this point you would have enough to start doing some stuff. If you had HTML, CSS on the front, use these data structures, you can easily get some stuff showing on a website, right? And which would then bring me to the next stage, which Leon kind of said already, strings and template literals. I use template literals every single day. I think it's fantastic. But then more ES6 plus base features, right? Like spread operators, optional chaining, nullish coalescing, which is one of my favorite operators that's rarely used by people. I love it. Modules. I'm very big on modules. And so this right here is like something that I would be digging down deep into. And then, of course, asynchronous programming. Now, here's one thing I want to specify with this. Asynchronous programming means you have an API, which is basically, for the simplest term, a URL. And in that URL, which is either local or being hosted on the internet, there's information there that you're bringing to the front. And with that URL, you are then sharing all the information. You're manipulating it. You're able to see it on the front end. You can post it all. You can just say, hey, maybe this URL has a field that says just names and you want to post the names. Boom, you could post those names. And so ways that you do that would be like fetch or async and await, which would go into asynchronous programming, right? And so you have the event loop and other things like that. That's stuff that you would really want to spend time on. But the problem is a lot of beginners, once they get to that stage, they're like, oh, I've got a project. I know how to show an API where them jobs at. One prime example of this, we had somebody for the cohort that I do. They applied and I was like, wow, you're at a very beginner stage. But they said, this is a project that I'm super proud of. I'm like, I'm glad that you're proud of this, but there's no way that this project is at like a company level. I wouldn't be walking into interviews showcasing this. And basically the project was just taking weather information and showcasing it like, hey, this is the weather in my area. That's a great project to learn from. There are projects that you build to learn from, and then there are projects that you build to get a job. You need to do both. So don't just think, oh, I need to only build projects for this. And the reality is, and it's on purpose, and people think I say this just to like give them extra work. It's not true. I can spit theory to you all day. And as I'm speaking, you are comprehending. And then I throw a keyboard in front of you, and this is your face. For those that are listening, mouth drop, you don't know what to do, you're frozen in time. And it happens every single time. So because of that, you must put your fingers on that keyboard and let them dance around a little bit.
Let's go. That's my favorite. Clip
Bro,
it.
but you have to. I promise you, it made the biggest difference in the world. And that's why even I tell people, don't copy and paste code. Type it. There's something that happens with your brain that really understands what's going on. Because you can read code for days, but until you have to type, it's different.
And we know in learning theory, there's a lot of really interesting things, like writing out things seems to help people with memory. And one of my favorite things DHH said in their Lex Friedman podcast interview, no matter how many YouTube guitar tutorials you watch, like learning how to play the guitar, you could sit there and watch hundreds of hours of YouTube guitar tutorials. But if you never actually practice on the key, like on the actual guitar, your fingers aren't going to know what to do. You haven't learned anything until you take what you're learning and apply it to the actual instrument. And it's the same thing with coding. There's something special about getting away from the tutorial or whatever you're reading and putting your fingers on that keyboard and I can't use your catchphrase, but like actually going through the motions. So please, at this point, you have to move from theoretical to playing and manipulating. And I would really hope that you do that from day one. Don't learn about variables and then like close the book and go home. Like, no, like type each bit out. Now, there's one other thing that you said that was really, really important that I think is one of the biggest things you can do to help your understanding of JavaScript. And when you get to this asynchronous stuff, the like going through the whole thing, going through like callbacks, then callback hell, the pyramid of death, or whatever you call it, promises, async await. That's like a really cool journey to like figure out like why did we have this callback hell in the beginning? What did promises give us in, what was it, ES8, right? Or is that or did they come with 6? Yeah, like they gave us something. No, promises came with ES6, and then async await came with 8, right? So like there's like this journey that you went through, right, where you got these like new things. Sometimes they're just syntactical sugar on tops of other things, but that journey is really cool to understand. And then the other thing that I beg you, if you're listening to this episode, please learn about the event loop. There's 2 presentations that I always love. Philip Roberts from JSConf EU. It's like 10 years old at this point. Phenomenal talk on like what the event loop is. And then Jake Archibald also has a good video too of like what is the event loop. You watch those 2 videos, you are going to understand more about JavaScript and what it's doing than a lot of people that have probably written it professionally for a long time. And it changes everything. How I think about JavaScript fundamentally changed. My understanding of what's happening in the browser, and when I do something, like when I do something as simple as like a console log, what's happening. When I do a set timeout, which isn't like that's a whole other beast, because like now we're talking about things that are JavaScript, not JavaScript, right? Like what's built into the language, not built into the language. Like all those things come to a head when you understand the event loop and where things get passed off until they're done being executed, and then how do they come back into this flow. Once you understand those things, it lifts the covers off, because you're doing things at this stage ideally of like DOM manipulation, document.query selector, document.get element by ID. You've been doing this stuff day in and day out for a month at this point, and then you realize that that's not actually JavaScript, right? That's an API that you're getting access to, and your mind explodes, and then you're excited to learn even more.
Yep. I mean, Leon literally just jumped ahead, but that's exactly where I was going to next. Like next stage at this point would be DOM manipulation, and for me, it's like if you've gone through these advanced topics, and of course, like prototype chain and inheritance, like functional programming, et cetera, memory management. I'll be honest, I put it on there on this list. I don't remember doing it in the beginning, but it's probably good to know. And I will say I took for granted what people do with memory. Once I started getting later stages in my programming journey, and to be honest, I never really took a true appreciation for it until I started writing Golang, go figure. And even though I was using Java and memory management, garbage collection was a thing that I thought about and used, but true appreciation for memory management came when I started writing Go. And then I realized, wow, I really should have spent way more time understanding this. That's to say, you could probably get by in your beginning stages not knowing it, but there's going to come a point where you need to actually be familiar with how much memory you're utilizing and how big a lot of your calls are going to be. With that being said, go ahead.
I was going to say, you should at least understand that the reason why you're getting away with a lot of this stuff is the V8 engine. You're probably running your JavaScript in a browser that's using something like the V8 engine. And so you're getting not only the compilation stuff, but all the extra garbage memory management stuff kind of handled for you. Because it's sitting on top of some really robust like C and C++ libraries and some other stuff now, I bet. And so once you understand the event loop, once you understand kind of what's happening underneath the hood, once you understand like the environment is what gives JavaScript these powers, then that opens you up to those optimizations down the line. And so don't shy away from the theory. Even if you're not going to use it every day, it's really important to understand what you're being given as a gift for free.
Yep. Which comes to the next stage, stage 2 of your learning. Well, actually, I guess stage 3, since stage 1 would be HTML, CSS. So stage 2 would be those core concepts. Stage 3 would be like DOM manipulation and really leveraging like APIs, right? Like just going through making a bunch of projects with different APIs. I think that's like a great learning stage, to be honest with you. I remember having a ton of fun with it. I remember being so enthusiastic about it. That was a really, really good stage for me. At this stage, I really want you, if you had to guess, if I had to, if you had to put a number on it, I've got a number in my mind. I don't know what your number would be. But if you said somebody was learning and they got to this stage, how many projects do you think they should have built by this point to just learn as they go?
I guess so there's like, I'm going to say it's like 20. Like really?
Damn.
Like yeah. 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 Yeah.
Exact number. I was
Okay.
thinking, I was like, am I going too high with mine? Okay,
No.
yeah.
Because it also depends on like, so the other thing is I think it actually be higher because if you learn a concept, you should build something with it. Full stop. If you learn variables, build something with variables. Right? Like if you learn how to do click events, build something with click events and make it your own. You're doing all these projects and they're meaningless. They're used to like reinforce a concept. They kind of always suck. And you don't want that to be your only thing you're programming that day. You want to take that concept and then make it your own. It could be anything. And that's also where a lot of people get in trouble because like, I don't know what to do when you say it's infinite. So pick something. If you know that you were in healthcare and you want to eventually maybe get a job as a software engineer in healthcare and you just learned about a variable, well, have a variable for something you did in healthcare. What would be like the time that you last checked on patient and have really good variable name that says time last checked on patient equals and then whatever that time is, right? So whatever it is that you want to do, you can have a theme related to your past employment, pick something cool that you want in the world, but try and make something your own. This is also where we haven't talked about incorporating AI into your workflow. This might be the one time I might advocate at this stage to be like, I just learned this topic. What would be a fun project I could do with it, right? At my skill level. And it can give you ideas. So if you can't think of that idea of what to build or how to build it, you can get that prompt back for you. So like you're literally, instead of prompting, you're prompting to get the prompt back, that's pretty funny. But like that's a good way to like start doing stuff that gets you building. So at this point, I think at least 20 is the minimum I would actually think about.
Yeah. It's funny. My mind exactly said 20, and I'm like, man, I might be going a little high with this one. But the reason why I'm there, and it's very transparent, the beginning of my journey, I was very all about learning the theory. I'll write some code to match it, and I just move on to the next. The reality is, when you're learning the theory, you're following a tutorial, and you're just doing something basic. This is an error-free path. The road is smooth. It's newly paved. Your car is just like zooming down. You don't even hear anything going back, right? Errors are actually what make you a better developer.
Yes.
And one prime example of this, literally yesterday in the cohort, we had somebody ping, hey, I'm blocked from doing something. And they sent a screenshot of their error. And I was like, hey, did you actually Google this? Or did you just say, oh, I have an error, let me throw it in the team chat? Because I said, if you Google this is a pretty common error. And they jumped in the Discord VC with the team, and they were trying to debug it. And I was like, let me jump in. And I jumped in, and I went through common things. Now, reading the error, I'm not like an encyclopedia of errors here, right? But like in our day-to-day, we're going to come across errors pretty frequently to where we know this is related to X, this is related to Y. Or like, hey, this error here specifically says the error is in this file location. This is the problem.
Yeah.
And so read the actual error. Don't let the red color of the text scare you away from reading the thing. Read it, Google it, research it, because that's going to make you better and get those concepts really ingrained in you. And that person in particular now knows when they see a trace error, hey, something is wrong with my next build. I started the server in the middle of the build for some reason. Let me go ahead, delete my next folder, reinstall, which, by the way, I'm now realizing I say this, hey, I've jumped a step, but delete the next folder, reinstall, npm install, and or do npm run build, or do an npm run dev. It'll add the next folder in there for you, and it'll get rid of that error, right? And so that's exactly what happened.
And this is where the real learning happens, right?
Yep.
This is where you move from that slower kind of type 2 thinking to the actual memory. And you can't deprive yourself of this journey, because you'll wind up in some really weird situations. I had someone that kind of did really well in the interview, but then bombed one key part, which they kept forgetting to save their file. They had the right answer, but they weren't saving their file. They weren't restarting their server to like see the changes in the DOM. And they didn't realize like at the end why they ran out of time and couldn't like get it to work. And for whatever reason, the interview wasn't helping them. And it's because they were so used to using tooling that did it all for them, that like saw the change, that did the auto save, that did the restart. And yeah, I'm not saying don't use those tools, but they should come after you've done it a bunch so that you understand what's happening. And programming is made up of so many little things like that, where if you are not debugging, looking at the errors, getting used to researching and understanding how this complex web comes together, you're going to find yourself maybe in a job and being in a really weird spot where like you can't figure out what the heck's happening. Even if you did like grind out leak code until your eyeballs fell out, right? That's where you wind up with folks that could do really good leak code but then can't actually code. That's where it comes from, because you're maybe a good researcher, you're a good studier, but you gotta give your brain this chance to explore and understand concepts, to build these mental maps, and for it all to kind of coalesce into your like body of knowledge. And that comes from playing with stuff, building real stuff that's off the beaten path of whatever tutorial you're following.
Yep. I would even take it like one extra step further to say, very often in job interviews, you will not be allowed to use the editor that you're used to. I actually can only recall one interview ever that let me use my own editor. It was actually at AutoZone. Kudos to AutoZone, because of all the companies I've ever interviewed at, to me, they probably had like one of the best experiences. But prime example, Google, you're using Google Doc.
Yep. Yeah. Straight in a like Google Doc. Yep.
There's no IntelliSense. There's nothing, no autocomplete, none of that. So don't get so used to the autocomplete, or I hate if you're using Copilot, especially at this stage. Like later on, different conversation, but this stage is crazy. But let's say you're using Copilot and they're writing out a whole function for you. If you don't know how to do that on a Google Doc and you're in an interview like that, you're going to kind of be screwed. And so you need to think about that going forward. And I know there's this whole debate, which we'll maybe get into in a moment, of you've learned how to code JavaScript and now you've learned a framework or a library or something, and now you're interviewing. What goes next? And like, what are those practices? Like the leak codes and the hacker ranks, et cetera, of the world. Oh, we hate these interviews. True. And depending where you are in the world, it may not be normal at all, or it may be very normal. Yeah. I've only ever had one interview experience ever, and that was at AutoZone, that wasn't the heaviest hacker rank leak code style assessment. Yeah. Then I met other people that have like, I've worked at tons of companies. I've never had one, period. It really depends on the companies that you're targeting. I definitely try to target, at least for me, what I call like household name organizations. I find prestige in working at a place and someone knows what I'm associated with, and I can talk about that, right? Or resume building companies, right? So like if you work at, AutoZone, people are familiar with that. If you worked at American Home Shield, people are familiar with that. If you worked at, I don't know, Google, I'm sure a few people heard about that, right? Like, it's not easy to get in those companies. It's very competitive because they are household names. So because of that, you need to adjust what it is that you're aiming for based on that. Regardless, I'd rather be over-prepared than not prepared enough and then regretting that I didn't spend time on something. With that being said, we could probably move forward. If you've gone to this stage, there's probably going to be a debate until the end of time on this one. There's been a debate on social media for a long time whether you should start with JavaScript or you should start with React or a framework or a library or something along those lines. What is your take on that? I know what my take is, and it gets me in trouble every time.
Start with JavaScript.
How dare you?
Just vanilla.
How dare you?
So there's a thing I'm always balancing, right? There's like the ideal case for like a super learner, right, where I might say incorporate something earlier, and then there's like the path that's like of least resistance for the most people. So my advice, I hope, is going to work for the most people to make them the most successful. And when you incorporate some of this stuff early on, for some folks that would have been successful no matter what happens, it works. But for that path for everyone, it doesn't. It's why I wait on things like TypeScript for so long. It's why I wait on incorporating things like React for so long, because you can build whatever you want to build with just the stuff we talked about so far. Like, what if you wanted to build anything, you could build it with just the stuff we talked about. Everything else is creature comforts, right? And so I want the fundamentals, like that, locked in. You're building, you're dialed, you understand, like, not only like the actual code, but like the theory behind it. What is the event loop? What prototype inheritance? Like, you understand these things deeply. You probably maybe also have been working with objects long enough now to know things like, all right, what is object oriented programming? What do I get with functional programming? Maybe you've had those conversations. Then you put something like TypeScript, then you put something like React on top of it. That's when you start to have some real things. I actually like you to go from where you're at right now, where we've talked, to Node. Get that backend ability. I have all my students build backend servers from scratch, meaning that we're just using raw HTTP methods. And then you're like, wow, this really, really sucks. And then you learn about Express. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that made everything a lot easier. And then you're like, well, this DOM manipulation thing, this really sucks. like I don't like state and like repainting the whole thing, like what's going on. And then, all right, maybe sprinkle a little bit of React, right? And now you're like, all right, now I have this big code base, I'm working with a team, and this bozo over here keeps breaking everything. Maybe we need some types. And then that's where TypeScript comes in, right? And so like I like the layering there.
Yeah, this bozo's using float instead of
till the day I die, I'll teach floats. And I love that it was I love that clip so much.
For those that may not necessarily catch that, that was a callback to a debate that we had on whether people learning CSS should learn Float, since Leon uses it part of his curriculum. And it was a very spirited debate. People loved it and all the good stuff. And I still remember one comment. He was like, Danny got cooked in that debate. And I'm like, calm down. Like,
pause.
Like, and that's another thing too. Like, in the realm of world of programming, you should learn how to have passionate discussions without the goal of dunking on somebody, but with the goal of how are we learning? Because I can learn from somebody else, they can learn from me, et cetera, et cetera. I still stand by what I said though. And I know you stand by you.
Yeah, a lot of these things, like the line I always use is strong opinions held weakly, right? You want a strong opinion so you like have a rhyme and reason why you're doing things. But when somebody that you respect says something else, then you explore it, right? Like, I went on my whole AI journey because Danny saw something last October that I didn't see. I didn't see it. I was the curmudgeon. I was like, I just like, this causes me more pain than it solves. But I was like, but Danny really likes it. Danny sees something that I don't see, and I respect Danny. So I was like, all right, let me start seeing if I can figure this stuff out. And then like my whole opinion's changed in under a few months because somebody I respected said something and I explored it.
Dan, that's such a good example, because I remember literally on this podcast you said, what am I missing? I remember that so distinctly. I hear all this hype, what am I missing? And now our last episode that went live as of the time of recording this was how AI is saving us 80% of our time on some basic activities. And so dang, that's actually pretty impressive. But that's also the reason why I've said I'm not married to any opinion, right? Where it's like, in a moment's notice, given enough information and support of a subject, I'll easily change my opinion on something. And I will take this as pride. A person who is now a friend of mine, but at the time that they made this comment, we weren't really close. He said, of all the people on Twitter, Danny's the only person that I believe if you have a debate with him on Twitter and you have good positioning behind it, he will literally change his opinion on Twitter instead of digging his feet in the sand. I take that with pride because I think that's the way that we learn, man. And like, some of the best learning moments of my life have been in those conversations where I've been able to really dive deep. Like, someone will tell you, hey, you should do a function like this. Well, like, why? I want to do my function like this. This is the way that I've always done it. Like, what's the purpose for this? Well, actually, this is not ideal. Why is it not ideal? It's very performant. I'm seeing all the well, if you do this, it's actually more performant. I did not know that. Now you've given me way more. And
how much more wonderful is life when that's your approach? It's just just a different way of being. And we see the people that get stuck in their ways. Like, the reason why learning to program can be hard for some people is because they run into those folks that are like, you gotta be doing blah blah blah, and if you don't, you're not a real developer. Like, don't listen to those people. Like, that's such a whack way to go through life. Like, no, there's going to be trade-offs. There's always going to be things that you should or shouldn't do. But through this journey, you should feel excited. You should be happy to build. And if you ever find yourself with people or community that doesn't make you feel that way, please find somewhere else to be, because this should be fun. And if it's not fun, you're not going to learn.
Yeah, and let me preface this by also saying one thing. By the time you get to the last stage that we just talked about, there's going to be moments where you're like, this is not fun. Like, why am I stuck on this? I'm banging my head against the wall.
Yeah.
Like, I remember so many people on social media at that time, because, again, social media was so different then. Yeah. Everybody was like, the only voices you heard on Twitter were, like, the geniuses of genius. Like, I was always looking, like, where's the dev like me that's, like, barely making it by at this point, making a good career? Like, I don't want to solve world hunger with React code, right? Like, I want to go further with this and just, like, make a living. And then, of course, like, you start learning more, you start getting more into it, you start wanting to do more and more and more. But honestly, it was tough. There was a lot that I struggled with. Yeah. And I think one big thing here is it's completely okay for it not to click in the beginning, but as time progresses, like, you're learning, you're exploring, you don't give up, because their errors are going to slap you around. That's going to be with no matter what you do, no matter how good you are going to get an error that slaps you around. It's impossible. It's unavoidable. I don't care how great you are with AI. I don't care how many devs you have around you. It's going to happen. And there's going to be moments where you're deciding, wow, maybe I'm not cut out for this. I can tell you right now, everyone made it seem like when they just read code, they were able to absorb it. For me, and I still have this problem, where I feel like I have to read something 5 times, where someone else has to read it once for it to click, in order for me to retain and finally have it click for me. It just means I have to work a little bit harder to be at the same level as somebody, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to remove gas from my gas tank because of that. If anything, I'm going to get an extra gas can so I can go the extra mileage to make sure I end up at the same destination as them. And so I think that's very, very, very important here for you to kind of internalize now as you're going through this. Because when you find out what a function is, this all makes great sense. Like, oh, we got an API coming, we're seeing the response. This all makes great sense. We want to add in regex?
Yeah.
That's Harry Potter levels of magic right there.
Yeah. Thank God for AI, because I don't write any regex anymore.
I'll admit, yeah. I hate to admit that, but I really have just started prompting my regex forms.
Yeah.
And I'll revalidate it. But to be honest with you, I've stopped memorizing. And that was the thing, though. This was the cycle of regex. Yeah. By the way, add that in the learning path. Be familiar with regex. Yeah, but regex is short for regular expression, so REGEX. With that being said, I can tell you right now, I always went through this path pretty much my entire career. I need regex. I will learn regex. I use the regex. And I'm like, why don't I understand what this pattern is doing right off the rip? I spend months studying regex. Don't have to write a single regex formula it's regex formulas, right? Yeah. Yeah, I was like, is there another word for it? Regex formula. I don't have to write one for 6 months. Stop learning it because I'm like, oh, I don't really need it. Months go by. I need one. I'm like, holy crap, I forgot it all. And then the cycle starts back again. And it just happens every single time. And I hated that because probably for like 5 years, I did that nonstop, just trying to like, no, I got to be the regex guy. Yeah. And it's like, nah, you end up searching for it. You end up Googling it, et cetera, et cetera. If anything, one thing that might help you is maybe creating a blog article for yourself at one stage that just has a bunch of like the formulas that you would use just to like re-reference.
The worst thing in the world as a programmer, I love this so much, is having a problem that you're trying to solve. And when you're searching for that problem, the only thing online about it is you asking the question 5 years ago.
And no one responded.
But here we are again, and I don't know what Leon from 5 years ago did, but I see him. I see it on Stack Overflow.
That's
funny. And it happens more often than I care to admit. So
I'm gonna lie, man. We laugh way too much on this podcast, man. Wow.
So a dev blog, I think, would be good.
That was funny. Okay. Next stage, or if you're on the other side of the debate on Twitter, the first stage.
Yeah.
framework or library. Now, there's definitely one that's more popular than the rest right now, as of the time we're recording this. I don't know in a year from now if people decide to change, which I really doubt at this stage. But it's React.
Yeah.
With that being said, and I've been very vocal about this in the past, so if you're a longtime listener, you definitely know this. My career in tech didn't start with React. Actually, I didn't even start writing React until like a year and a half into my career. It started with Java Angular, right? Yeah. And so you need to find out what's marketable in your industry. But that doesn't mean you can't start somewhere, learn, and then pivot. And so I will say, kind of like I said earlier, if you learn one, learning the rest is becoming a lot easier for you. Now, I will say this. I truly believe my learning of Angular first made learning React a walk in the park. I don't know if I would have that same feeling if I were to go from React to Angular. Because Angular isn't just a library you pull things in. Everything is included in the box. Yep. So that was such a like foreign concept to me if I'm thinking in reverse. But the other thing that I'm thinking about is with Angular, it even has its own syntax, like ngIf. Yep. And so that's something that you have to really get used to and wrap your brain around. When I went to React, I'm like, oh, I don't have to write this. This is so much easier. Oh, I can pull this in. This is so much easier. Oh, I don't have to think about every single like tool that's inside of this box. I can just pull the ones I need. That's so much easier. And so it opens you up for a lot. Now, with that being said, I don't think there's a wrong answer in this one. The one I will probably push back on, depending where you are in the world, the location really matters on this one, is Vue. I don't know if I feel comfortable with you learning Vue immediately unless you just know that you're in a city or state or local area that Vue is just super in demand. Because in the US right now, as of the time we're recording this, the job opportunities for Vue, it's very, very small. In Europe, it's a lot higher.
You want to say Vue until you're frustrated with something else. And then you move to Vue. I think the advice here is like, look at your local demand, right? Some places are still really deeply Angular. Some places are definitely really deeply React. I do like picking up a library or framework for learning's sake as well, right?
That's
like
different.
learning the concepts, learning why React does the things that it does, and then also just trying to understand. I like to try and understand hype at this stage too. Because now you've been able to build, you're understanding how to build, you're starting to take in other people's opinions. One of the cool thing about React is everyone has like a really different opinions about how you do everything, how you do rendering, how things happen on the web, in the browser. And understanding those conversations and the different cycles of what's happening, I think is really important at this stage of like your learning. And so I would probably default reach for something like React unless your local environment is like something wildly different, just so that you're part of like that thinking process and understanding those types of questions, and the iteration cycle is a little bit different. So yeah, I think you can't really go wrong here. Definitely pick what's local to your environment, and then it's important to pick up the library or frameworks so that you can start understanding these more nuanced ideas of what's happening on the web.
Yeah. So I will say, be prepared that if you ask something on the internet or you post something, that someone's going to find something wrong with it. In the beginning, I took it to heart. Now I'm like, this is the quota. Like, this is going to happen no matter how perfect you make something. Prime example, one of the people, especially in the world of React, that I think it's pretty universal to respect this individual, Dan Abramoff. I like Dan a lot. He gets comments sometimes that he has to defend. So it's like, if Dan's got to defend his opinion. So I'll say that it's inevitable. It's part of the process. There's no way, shape, or form around it. Some people that you meet are phenomenal human beings. Some people that you meet, maybe not so much. And so it's just navigating all that. But just know you're going to get through it, right? Like, so I want to get so hung up on that part. So I would learn a framework or library. I'd definitely make a lot of stuff with it. Definitely would jump into the back end of things as well. But if like that's your path starting out, I think that's like a phenomenal place to go. But we have to talk about one thing that I'm very big on. I don't know your opinion on this, but I drilled this one thing into my students. I wouldn't let them leave the cohort or the bootcamp cohort rather, not the regular cohort, but I wouldn't let them leave the bootcamp cohort until they were super strong in this one concept, because I truly believe, especially at a junior level, this one thing separates you from any other junior going into an opportunity.
Testing. Oh, interesting. Cool.
I'm very, very big on testing. I've had actually like multi-hour long conversations just around the concept of testing. There's different levels of testing, but at the very, very least, you need to be familiar with unit testing. You have to. Unit testing, it's one of those things that if you were to go into, let's say, a coding interview, and let's say they had you build something, and with like maybe 10 minutes, you throw together a unit test to test it, what do you think they're going to think?
Yeah.
Wow, the onboarding time for this person can be so small compared to anybody else. They already know testing. I'm very big on testing. I think tests are like one of the greatest forms of documentation. Prime example, anytime I go to a company, your task when joining a company is learning the code base, right? No one's going to expect you to memorize every little line of code, but you need to know what's going on. What's one of the best ways to figure out what's going on? Unit test. Why? Because it's testing the flows that they expect users to go through to use the programs. You now know what their mind is around. So if they have 1,000 tests in that code base, you have 1,000 ways to start figuring out what the company thinks users are going to be using their applications for. That's a great way to learn. It's a great form of documentation. And so I learn a lot just from reading tests and making tests, and especially mocking the data. Like, you learn a lot from that. So unit testing. The others are important, don't get me wrong, but especially at your stage, it doesn't really hold a lot of weight. I'd rather unit testing, and you can learn integration and later on down the road.
Yeah. I think in my classrooms, it's a time thing, right? And so I've tried it in the past, and it kind of sucked up too much of the time or energy for folks to learn it early. I wish I was a better instructor to teach it early. And so I got to think about how to do that in my curricula going forward, because I agree with you. I think it's important. I think at this stage, if you have gotten to this point to where you've done all these things, learn it. Like, incorporate it into your practice, incorporate it into your workflow. There is a lift here, because it's two lifts. It's the learning how, like the technology piece of like, what do I use? Am I incorporating jest? Am I doing all these, like, what am I doing here, right? And then the other thing is like, how do I think in this way? And both of those take time. But once you get to the other side and you think in that way, you're off to the races. And so give yourself that ability and that time to start small, like little things, and then over time make it more and more of your code base. And realize you've probably been writing tests for a while at this point too. If you've been using things like Codewars or Elite Code, like, you've seen them, you've been interacting with them. Now it's time to apply them to your own code base as well.
Yeah, it's funny because for me, I feel like that's where the problem solving truly takes off. Because if you make a test and it doesn't work, guess what? Either the code is wrong or the test is wrong, and you need to fix it. Yeah. But once the test is right and it fails because of something, you now know something's wrong with the code. This needs to be fixed in order to make this run properly. Because my rule is, once a test is built, that test isn't changing unless there's a specific reason why. Otherwise, it's showcasing that there's an error with the code. And why is this important? If Leon and I are working on a team, and I have a unit test for, let's say, a user sign up form. They're signing up to be a member on our website. And then all of a sudden, after I built the form and I built everything, and now it's all passed when I finally gave it to him. And he's like, oh, you know what? I need to add in an apartment field because we're getting members that live in apartment buildings. And he puts it in, and now the test is failing. He knows the test probably needs to have the apartment field added, but no other logic on the test needs to change. Yeah. If it's still failing, something's wrong with the code because it's interacting with something incorrectly, and then he can make that adjustment. You're protecting yourself, because the reality is, if that bug goes through somehow, some way, and then 4 months down the road, they're like, oh, there's a bug on the sign-up page, it comes back on me. Yeah. And like, Danny, you built that component. You need to go figure that out. No one's going to be like, Leon, you added a field.
Yeah. And I think there's something here too about making yourself, and you kind of already talked about this too, but like making yourself an advantageous hire because you have these skills that lead to more maintainable code, right? If you have all these accessory skills, you are quicker to onboard, you are easier to work with, you are more employable. Something that I get a lot of whenever I bring this up online, because I'm just not eloquent enough to like to like state it in a way that makes sense to everyone, so I get a lot of weird pushback on it. I have a trouble with all the extra when it comes to programming. I think JavaScript is beautiful. I love that I can express myself in any way, shape, or form that I want. There's no guardrails on it. Nobody's telling me that I have to do it this way or that way. I can just do it. And so when I add in types, when I add in tests, like something beautiful gets sucked out of my soul, and I don't know how to explain it. But that's just for me when I'm writing my code for myself. The moment I'm turning this into working with somebody else, all these guardrails have to come into place, or else we can't communicate. We're not speaking the same language, you know?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's fair, right? And the example that I often give to this, because this is a conversation I've had before, go figure, and it was musicians love making music, man.
Yeah.
They don't like the process of selling it, the process of marketing
that's such a good idea, yeah.
And so that's exactly what this is in the programming terms. Like, I want to create code that works, but I don't want to do the testing, and I don't want to add types. But this is what makes it the business. Like, you're protecting everybody involved with this. So if you do get to this stage with testing, obviously you're going to be going, let's say, use the example of React. I really would like you to use some kind of state management library. Redux is fine, but I would probably know something extra given the state of the market, and it's probably going to be ZooStand. Or, I'll be honest, my personal fave, TanStack, everything TanStack. So TanStack Query. Another thing that I've even been experimenting with for like the last several months is Solid.js. I like Solid a lot. It's not... and I said that at a weird time. It's not a state management library. It's just another JavaScript framework that does a lot, and they have a lot of great solutions. When I said TanStack, it made me think of that. But ZooStand, TanStack, those are great solutions there. I would then really implore you, at least once, if you're learning React, obviously, and I shouldn't say obviously since this is a roadmap, you should be learning Next.js. It's very hard to imagine working in a company in today's market that isn't using or leveraging Next.js if they're using React. And because of that, you should at least try at one stage to deploy something to Vercel. Vercel they own, support, and push Next.js. So it only makes sense to kind of at least experience what their ecosystem is, because it could end up being a question at some time, or at least gives you the foresight and thought of like, how would I do this? And the best part about Vercel is it ties into like a GitHub repo. And so if you're pushing everything to GitHub, it will automatically update. GitHub, this is a whole different episode we can probably go into and nuances and stuff, but I really think that will give you the full picture of everything. As far as like trying to get.
It's also important to note that this shouldn't be. You should be incorporating these, I think, even earlier. Like the Next.js, I agree. Like you want to see something all the way to the end, right? Just so you understand how people build things like in a modern way on the web. Like even if you don't like Next.js in the future or you don't want to use it, that's fine. But you should at least understand how a lot of businesses are being built with these tools, so you form your opinions. But I think you should be incorporating these other tools earlier too. The Git and GitHub stuff. You should have had that already at this point, because it's every day part of your development workflow, but it's going to make your life a lot easier. You're not going to lose code. You're going to start to understand how all this tooling comes together. And I think even before you get to React, you should have stuff hosted. So maybe you're using like a Netlify or a Fly or a Render, but getting comfortable with the whole process of I like write code, I push it, something happens on GitHub, stuff gets hosted. Like figuring out that flywheel early is great, so that by the time you're building more and more serious projects, you kind of have the flow going. So I think we kind of jumped to here, but I would say by the time you are getting done with the fundamentals of JavaScript, you should incorporate Git and GitHub into your workflow and start kind of making it like an everyday thing, like committing what you worked on that day, pushing it, and
Yeah, I'm very big on that. I've often said the biggest regret that I ever had in my first week in tech is not knowing Git more, and so be better than me at that time, because I'll be honest, I almost quit my job because of that. There was a huge fiasco, which we'll talk about it another time. Maybe we'll do a whole GitHub
when we almost quit.
headache.
Oh, that was such a good episode. Yeah.
But yes, you should be using GitHub regularly, and one specific reason why, and I hate it, but a lot of employers look at it. I think you're more important than a green square in your chart. A lot of employers use that as a metric to see how frequent you are, especially at the earlier stages.
Yeah.
Some also do it for the later, which just sucks. But earlier stages, they're really using it. And so you need to be committing to that thing as frequently as possible to kind of show activity. Because again, if you're learning, you should be writing code. You should be pushing it up somewhere to test the things that you're doing. I want you to really focus on being project-based learners as opposed to theory learners, and trying to apply it. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest jump in my learning journey, and I'm saying exponentially, was I would learn the theory and then apply it right away into a project. I would like build a project specifically on the thing so I could do it and implement it. You should do that because you're going to learn a lot in that process. And so, y'all, normally we end these episodes with a question of the day. I feel like this whole episode has been a response to a question of the day. And so because we've done justice to this, let's go ahead and skip it today, because this is really in response to y'all asking for this. And so I would say, if you have questions, drop them in the comments. Drop it in our email, DannyandLeonspodcast@gmail.com. We read them all. We try to respond to them in the best ways that we can. When you see comment replies, that's us. We're going in there. We're going every single day. We try to check it and reply to y'all. So don't hesitate. We do check them out on all platforms that we have access to. Outside of that, if you haven't already, if you stuck out around to the end, please drop the word JavaScript in the comments and let us see who stuck around here.
Curious.
I know the real ones are going to hear us be like, you know we're here. And I know you are too, but I want to know who you are. So that way we could show y'all love, man. We appreciate every single one of y'all. It's been real. It's been fun. And we will see you on the next one. Peace, everybody.
Peace.